welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. Today's guest is Maribeth Decker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm just enjoying this already with songs in my mind. And thank you,
Yes,
Mary.
because we're going to get to the hype song later. But I was just making sure before I hit record that you knew what your song was. So now it's running in your head, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Maribeth, what were the values and beliefs that you were raised with that contributed to you becoming who you became as you grew into an adult?
I would say, oh goodness. So let me go back and pull those things together. There was a certain sense that it was important to toe the line, to particularly things have changed for the better for women, but I was just talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about women would go to college for their MRS degree because the important part was to marry a guy who had good financial futures, and so there was a lot of strength and beliefs in don't embarrass your family, don't step out of line, be good, be quiet, be smiley, and then I think the religious upbringing also really pushed in the hierarchy, the authority stuff. And school did it too, I'm not putting down any of my teachers. Most of them did a pretty good job. But there was that whole thing of shutting down, sitting in your chair, and all that. And I can remember the shift from when I started first grade, and how this crazy girl who at 5 years old was in the back seat of the car kissing her boyfriend Jack was now sitting and reading her book diligently, and doing her homework, and trying to behave and all that stuff. So that's what I grew up with. I'm a little different now, but
yeah. So how did those influences affect you? As you were getting started in your career, in your life, and then how you said you're very different now. So how did what influenced that?
Well, I think part of it was when I was in probably middle school, 7th, 8th grade. I had a spiritual experience. I asked God if God existed, and I got I experienced. I didn't have a conversation. How Creator loved us, and loved me particularly, loved everything, and was in everything. And I don't know if I've ever said it this way, but I think that was the beginning of saying, those people in charge might not be right about everything.
Wow. And how old were you?
I was like 12 or 13.
Okay. All right.
But you can't really go back and say to the guys in charge that you went to church with, I got a different view from the Creator this weekend about, so it kind of stuffed it down. But I think that was actually the beginning of saying, maybe they don't know everything. And so there is a part of me that woke up that said, let's just jump in and try it. When I don't give myself a lot of credit for being like this courageous person, but my boyfriend, I think he wanted to move on. So he took me to the Navy recruiter and said, why don't you think about joining the Navy? And the Navy recruiter says, yeah, you can be an officer. You got a degree. And I said, "Can I get a warm island?" And they said, "Probably. You, would you like to go to Puerto
Probably.
Rico?"
We'll
And I
say
said,
whatever we need to say for you to sign up, right?
"They didn't lie. They didn't lie." But I said, "Yeah, because let's do it." And so I did get Puerto Rico. Ponce, Puerto Rico was my first duty station. I said, "This is cool." And I think they got me out started by just taking that leap of faith, or just like, oh, what the heck? Can it get any better than what's happening now, which is like nothing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it
And
was good. It was a good
it,
choice.
yeah. And so it's interesting because like you were led to it by somebody else, but it doesn't
I,
matter. Like that's often how things happen in life is you're led to it through someone else, but maybe that the other people or other circumstances are just the conduits.
I have seen that so much, Lori, where, so I go into the Navy, it's a quick version. I look around and say, dang, these people drink like I do. I love it. And then I go to a training and duty station where we learn, because we're trying to teach responsible alcohol use to sailors.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I get
Good
my
luck with that.
taste.
How's that going?
Thank you. And I learned about the 12-step program, and I was sent to check it out, so I understood it. And at some point I said, "Oh, you know what? These people are really talking to me." And I actually got sober in the Navy.
How many years did it take you before you were introduced to that?
Look, I was so I was young. I was like, I got sober at 26,
Okay. And
and I
but you
started
said
drinking
when
in
you
high
went into the
school.
army or sorry, the Navy, um,
So it
y-
was my second duty. You have to do it by duty stations sometimes. So it was out in Japan. So we're talking like 3 or 4 years in.
mhm.
Both my husband and I decided to get sober and do it. He jumped in first, and I lost a drinking partner. And I said, "Okay, I'm in."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. And you had said when we talked before that there was alcoholism in your family. So
there
did your family when you decided to get sober, like how did they respond to you?
they weren't thrilled. Let me say it from my mother's point of view. It was like, "Oh, my daughter's an alcoholic. What did I do wrong?" And that's a strong word. People use different words now, but I'm okay with it. Better than a drunk. Um, so there wasn't huge support.
Mhm.
It, it was like, which actually, it's interesting that you ask that, because then it was like, you don't tell me what to do. You don't decide anything for me now. I know what's good for me, and this is good for me. And I hope you figure out in your heart uh, that I'm in a good place, but family, you don't get to decide.
So
That
it kind of
I need to
strengthened
be.
your resolve.
It did. It did.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. And so how long were you in the Navy and what happened after?
I was in 17 years. I got an early retirement. There was a drawdown after the USSR kind of collapsed.
Hmm.
And so I then found a job in a lovely association. And I took that job as part of just being a responsible mother, bringing in income and things like that, and seeing how I could do. And I stayed there for about 21 years. I guess I'm supposed to say this. I'm not sure I brought this up last time, but I stayed there even after my husband had a heart attack when he was in his 40s, and I stayed and took care of my kids through that, and they were very supportive of me through all that. And that that was an amazing thing that I actually got back up and kept going after losing him, and it was one of the hardest things our family has ever encountered was his loss. Uh, and then I have to, okay, so for me, having young kids is what kept me going. It's like they got to have somebody, and it's you, Mary Beth. So you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the best I could. But at some point, there was a desire to do something else. It was like a calling. And I'm trying to think of how did it come. It just popped in, honest to God.
That's
It
what I was
was
going to
first,
ask you. Like, how did that show
yes,
up for you? And did it show up and then you stayed at that? Like, you didn't immediately go, oh, I have this
no,
new calling. I'm going to quit my job and go do this thing. Like, what was the transition period? And
yeah, I don't have that much courage. I I had the calling, and they were nice enough to let me start getting training as a massage therapist. I actually took time off, used up my leave, and a couple after 2 or 3 years, was it? It was more than that. I waited till my kids were in college. I actually wanted to make sure we had everything taken care of, and then
that makes sense,
then
especially since,
yeah,
as a
thank
single
you.
parent.
Yeah, and then I went off on my own, and when I was a massage therapist, there's an intuitive part of that anyway. I think most good massage therapists, they just kind of start to know what parts of the body need to be worked on.
Mm-hmm.
So I also learned energy healing. And sometime after becoming a Reiki master, craziest thing happened. My dogs who had passed started communicating with me. And that was the new path that I was not expecting, and where I'm at now.
When you say they were communicating with you, how were you getting these messages?
Oh, it was great. My dog Timmy, he actually came back as I say a full body apparition, not some of those ghost things that you hear about, or maybe people have seen it. You kind of see through them. No, it looked like this dog was sitting in the dining room smiling at me.
Hmm.
And I saw him out of the corner of my eye, and I turned around and said, Timmy, and he was gone. Uh, but I knew in that instant, he survived death. His personality was still intact. He was a grinning, happy guy. I always do this, one ear up and one ear down, because that's my Timmy. It was like that.
Uh-huh.
And he stopped by, and maybe he'd been trying for years, because he wasn't like he had passed, recently. He stopped by to say, "Hey, I'm okay. I still love you," and it was great. It was
Hmm.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I'm looking, because I have their pictures up here, so pardon me. I'm looking at Eddie. She's a girl dog that the kids named, and she passed. Um, and let me figure out how the timing was. Right before, so this was during my transition period into animal communication. I was still working for the Federation and in massage therapy training. I had to go staff an annual meeting, and staffing means you stand out front, you smile, you get people, and if you've lost an animal or that is not what you want to do.
No, no,
She
you
came
need,
with me. She came with me, right? No, you want to find a corner and cry.
yeah.
So she came with me on the plane. I I was in the aisle seat, which I usually don't have. I like the window,
Hmm.
and she was sitting in the aisle. So I'm like this. Let's see. I feel like I'm petting her, and I'm thinking people must think I'm nuts. But I'm like, oh, Eddie, you're here with me. And she came back to the hotel room with me and stayed with me. Uh, and that gave me enough comfort to be able to get up and do what I had to do.
Hmm.
And after that, I started looking into animal communication.
For other people, to help other people communicate with their
Yes,
animals.
to
Yeah.
do. Thank you. Like, what is it? How do I do it on purpose? Um, how do I get better at it? That all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm always fascinated by animal communication because obviously animals, they can communicate, but they don't speak, the language that we speak necessarily. And so you have to tap into a different energetic vibration for them. And yeah, and in the past,
Yeah.
I've a while back, I don't remember what episode it was, but Bridget Baker was on the show and we were talking about it. She was the person I had helping me communicate with my animals at the end of their lives. And and she also is trained in Reiki and other energetic healing modalities for
Me
people
too.
and animals, but it started with the people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's same for me, but I don't know if she said this, but when you start working with people who bring their animals to you and they want to know what's going on, you start out with a human being whose heart is so open
Mm.
and so um, they're so committed and dedicated to what will help their beloved companion. And you have to say, when you're just working with people who maybe want healing or something like that, they're still into themselves. We
Mm.
are. I'm there. I'm absolutely guilty. But you get a different thing when you're talking to people who are worried about or they love their animals. And I fell in love with human beings from that.
Yeah, wow. And do you think that's because animals are they love unconditionally? Like for real. People say they love another human unconditionally. And
and
I'm
and then
guessing
you
that
then
there
you
is
get your
something at somewhere somebody could do something that would make you not love them anymore. But animals seem to never reach that point. No matter how naughty they are, it doesn't matter. We love them anyway.
we do. And it goes both ways. So it opens our hearts.
Mm.
I know I have a lot more empathy as I get to know more animals, and also I have more empathy for people as for whatever they go through. And I gotta say, I have not met animals who hold grudges. People think they do, but not very often. Almost never. There's other
Mhm.
things going on,
Yeah.
but that is one emotion that you usually probably shouldn't attribute to your animal. Look for another reason why they're
Uh-huh.
doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that just getting into who they are and feeling that they also forgive us a lot. We don't have to be perfect people,
Uh-huh.
and then just knowing that we can extend that to the people around us too. That's been life changing for me.
How do the animals communicate with you? Is it like, do they send you pictures or do you hear their voices? How do they communicate with you?
I get various. ways. It started out with when I was, so you heard my two stories of visuals and then just a knowing that my dog was there. So you got the knowing and you got the visuals that showed up. And that visuals show up a lot. But that Timmy thing where actually with my eyes open seeing him, that doesn't happen much for me anymore. It's in my mind's eye.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of a memory, or if you think of your dog or your cat or your horse or bunny, and you get a picture of them, that's the kind of thing I get. And I also get feelings in the body. So emotions can show up, physical feelings, how they're feeling, what parts of the body aren't doing well. They will share that with me. I do hear words. Um, and it's, and even sometimes music. I remember I was working with a DJ, and we were connecting in with his cat who had passed, and a song from Green Day showed up. And I knew the words well enough to say, this is, it was about the shadow. And he says, oh, yeah, she was my shadow. And so, and it came through in a way that a DJ of
Mm-hmm.
alternate
Mm-hmm.
rock would love to hear it, you know?
Right.
So all of those, let's see, I think we got it. Everywhere, every way there's a sense from the physical world, there's a possibility that we'll get it from the energetic connection, the telepathic connection, because I do think it goes into the brain and the brain translates it for us,
Mm-hmm.
which the brain does for everything else. So
Yeah.
it's doing it for the telepathic stuff too.
How because the show is called Fine is a four-letter word. At what point in your journey so far were you saying everything's fine, but it wasn't fine? And was that when you were at the association? And then I know I'm taking a step back here.
Yep, that's okay. I'm thinking about where was it? I believe it was at the association. It was a good group of people. I had a job that that I felt that I was contributing something to what they were uh, working for, and yet something was missing,
Mm-hmm.
and I was ready to do something else. And I think that's where the fine is not fine. It's not good enough. I could have probably stayed there uh, and kept doing things. Maybe I think they would have given me stuff to do no matter what. They're a good group, but it was like, I don't think so. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think so. I think there's maybe fine isn't good enough now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
want
that's when
more.
you were being called to do the massage therapy and then
Massage.
the energy healing things um and step into those gifts. Was there any indication earlier in your life that you had these gifts and these abilities?
Not much that I can recall. I I got to be honest. I would like the story of at 3 I'm talking, you know, baby do Doctor Doolittle things. I did
Yeah.
play with squirrels one time. My grandfather noticed it, and he noticed they were chasing me, and then I'd run towards them. They'd go back up the tree. So we had a lot of fun there. But no, I think it. I believe it showed up when I started opening different parts of my abilities. I turn them on and switch them on, and now I don't apologize for it anymore. I just say, hey, if it can happen to me at like, was it my 40s, my 50s, Who could it not happen to? It's something that we are all, it's part of our bodies, minds, and spirits. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something you have to be somebody special to do.
Yeah.
You can learn it, you can practice it.
How did you develop your abilities? Once you stepped into, I have these, I accept them, I'd like to explore, how did you develop them further?
I started working with teachers, some really great teachers, and it was partly explanations of what's happening or how it can happen, and a lot of practice with feedback. So once you get a taste for this and you start to know that it's happening, I still, and I think every single person I've ever talked to, almost all of us doubt ourselves. We say, well, you knew that anyway, you made it up, you were lucky. So practice was
Mm-hmm.
like, got to do it. You got to do it. You got to see, you got to notice that the stuff that's coming through is real. And yeah,
Notice and trust.
trust. Yes,
Trust
those two
that it
things.
is, like you said, notice it's real, trust that it's real.
Right. And in the beginning, most of us need to hear, geez, that sounded really weird to you, Mary Beth, but I got to tell you that is exactly. It's about the one time I had a customer client, human client who wanted to know what her dog's favorite things were, and I'm like, I'm thinking in my head marshmallow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you got to be kidding me. So I said, well, it's chewy and white and sweet and kind of sticky. And she goes, are you talking about a marshmallow? I'm like, here it comes. She says, he loves marshmallows. Um, that stuff helps. And then you start saying, well, I'll just share it and see what happens, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
I remember one of my very first episodes, Melanie Weller was talking about, she had been a physical therapist and people would come, she started getting patients who would come to her who had nobody else could help them. And she had very strong intuitive abilities, but she was like, I'm a physical therapist. That doesn't have a part in that. But once she started allowing herself to let these same messages, like you're talking about, she would say things, weird things. I think her episode was called You Have a Ghost in Your Neck. Because
Oh,
she would
yes.
say things, she would get these messages, and she's like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And she would say it, and the person would be like, oh, that makes total sense. Like they would know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
sounds like
exactly.
that was a similar for what you experienced.
Yeah. And speaking of that, sometimes there is stuff hanging around both people and animals that needs to be cleared up. So not everybody's ready to hear that, but those that
Mm-hmm.
are, you can do some good work.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it's a PT because the association I worked for was a PT association. So
Okay.
yeah, good
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, what's next for you? What shows you that everything has been coming together?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I've been told that I'm go- that I have some things to say about our relationship with uh, non-humans and the state of the planet and things like that. And I have one small theory I'd love to share, but um, that's because I really have a bigger picture that our relationship with our animals are who've decided to live with us is a stepping stone to us becoming the kinds of human beings that will begin to cherish the world again and all the beings that live here with us. So I'm
Mm,
hoping that's the key. That's one of the keys, anyway, to keeping this world going.
that's awesome. And how are you sharing what you do with the world?
Well, obviously I do podcasts. I have blogs. and I'm going to share my story, and it feels like an Aesop's fable if I can. It's pretty short, but
Absolutely.
I'm going to
I
keep
love
talking about it.
stories.
Okay, so this is a fable. So there was a congress, a convention of all the species of the world, and they got together and they said, "Wow, we thought the humans had gone off track a few times, but boy, oh boy, are they like they're going somewhere where it's getting pretty crazy." And what can we do? And they all looked at the dogs and the cats and the horses and the rabbits, and they said, you guys, I want you to move in with these humans and and show them what it means to be heartfelt. Help them to reconnect to their heart and nature, and be the stepping stone so they start looking at all of us and finding all of us desirable and worthy and full of respect, and maybe we can start living in harmony. And the dogs and the cats and the horses go, okay, regular feedings, warm, sleeping in the bed with my people. Yeah, we can do that. We don't have to be outside anymore. We'll come in and we'll start it. So I think they're in there. They're the forward troops coming in to wake us up back to the beauty of this world.
The brave souls who
Yes.
volunteered to go
Yes.
interact with humans. Jeez.
Yes.
Nice. And now let's get to the hype song. What's the song you listen to when you need an extra boost of energy?
Oh, I love Pyro. Um, and it is by Kings of Leon,
Uh-huh.
because I get up and I start moving and I start singing, and it's just a fun song to listen to. It's the best.
All right. I will put a link to that in the show notes so people
Good.
can get a feel for it. Yeah. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, they want you help with communicating with their animal, or for whatever other reason, another part of your story resonated with them and they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
The best way is to go to my website, sacredgrove.com. SACREDGROVE.com. And there's everything's there
Okay.
to connect with me. Yeah.
Great. I will put a link to that in the show notes as well. Maribeth, thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
This was wonderful, Lori. Thank you for letting me talk about all these different subjects.